One of the most frequently asked questions we receive from investors is what all the paperwork is that they receive throughout the loan process. Today we're going to talk about the documents that an investor will receive between the initial loan documents to invest and when the investment is complete and interest starts. Admittedly, there is a lot of documentation that goes along with an investment at Ignite Funding, so we'll take a few minutes to review the packet of information an investor receives just before a loan is funded and what each document means. This packet is what we refer to as the pre-funding documentation, since it's just before the loan is funded. I'd like to welcome Misty Bethany, our Chief Compliance Officer of Ignite Funding today, while we walk through some of the questions that investors have. Thanks for joining us, Misty.
No problem.
What is the form that asks an investor to mark received or waived for various borrower documents?
So as a commercial mortgage broker in the state of Nevada, we adhere to the Nevada Mortgage Lending Division's regulations. And one of their requirements is disclosures that go out to every investor on every loan. One of these is the Mortgage Investment Disclosure Form B for original fundings and Mortgage Investment Disclosure Form C for assignment fundings. Basically, this disclosure lets the investors know that there are certain documents pertaining to the borrower and the property that they're entitled to receive before their investment is complete.
So why does an investor mark received if they've not yet been sent the documents?
Yeah, it can be a little confusing. The language of the form is actually dictated by the state, and so when you mark received, it doesn't mean that you've already received the documents. What it means is that you want to receive those documents. And so we're going to talk a little bit later on about the timing of when an investor can expect to receive those documents.
Why does an investor still receive the documents even if they mark waived?
So Ignite Funding's policy is to send every document to every investor every time on a loan. And really it's because we hold ourselves to a high standard of compliance. We pride ourselves on being very transparent with our investors, and so we want to make sure that all of those documents are sent each time an investor goes on a loan.
So what exactly are the documents, and why are these specific documents included at this time?
There are 6 documents that an investor is entitled to receive in the pre-funding packet. The borrower application, the borrower tax returns, borrower credit report, the analysis of the borrower's ability to pay, the preliminary title report, the BPO or appraisal if one has been received. And so really what I want you to think about is if you're applying for a mortgage to buy a home, think about all the documents that you're required to provide to the bank for that loan. Well, the difference is that the bank is laser focused on you and your ability to make your monthly mortgage payments, whereas Ignite Funding and our investors are more focused on the underlying value of the asset. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of those documents and what they really mean and how Ignite looks at those when preparing a loan, doing a loan with an investor.
So now we're going to be joined by Pat Vassar, the Director of Underwriting, who's actually collecting these documents so that he can shed a little bit more light on these 6 documents we received. Thank you for joining us, Pat. So what is the information on the application and who completes this information?
Well, the information on the application is everything you would normally get on a normal application to take out a mortgage from a bank. One of the key aspects of it is what information that we require on top of that. The biggest one is the sources and uses of funds. We want the borrower to fill out the form, and we want the borrower to indicate specifically where the funds are being utilized for, whether that is the acquisition of the loan, the development of the property, or the actual vertical construction of the property. No matter what it's being done for, we want them to indicate how it's to be used. Just in case anything goes wrong down the line, we can go back to this form and say, hey, you said it was going to go towards this area. What happened?
And are the tax returns of the borrowing entity, the parent company, the guarantor, or the borrowing entity natural person, and why?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the loan. If there is a guarantee on the loan, it will be from the guarantors of the loan, which will be a natural person. In some instances, we get a corporate guarantee. So regardless of the LLC that we are lending to, if the guarantor is a parent company, then we'll require the information of that parent company. Sometimes it is a non-recourse loan, therefore no personal information is disseminated to us, and it's just on that borrowing entity, which in most cases is typically just a special purpose entity or one that has been in business for not very long period of time, so they either don't have tax returns or the tax returns they have are very implicable to the asset we're lending on.
As it relates to the borrower's credit report, what are we looking for as far as information on that credit report when we're underwriting a loan?
Credit kind of comes in two forms. We want to make sure that they have done well with the credit they have had in the past, and then secondly, we want to make sure that they have the credit going forward to pay their bills. So a credit report is past looking, right? It is what they have done in the past with the credit that they were given, whether that's home loans, auto loans, credit cards, things of that nature. So what we look for is that, have they taken out credit previously? If so, how much was it? And then thirdly, what did they do with that credit? Were they able to pay it off? Is it still open? So those are the three major things that we take a look at.
Why is a borrower's ability to pay determined this close to the end of a loan being funded? And is this analysis valid for a short period of time, long period of time? What's your opinion on the borrower's ability to pay?
The borrower's ability to pay, unlike a credit report, is supposed to be forward-looking. It's looking at the ability of that specific borrower to pay that loan as well as all of their other debt obligations in the next short period of time. So the duration of those, or how valid they are good for, is a very short period of time because it's forward-looking. Things change in the future. We can't predict what's going to happen, but we want to make sure that they have the ability to repay the existing debts they have and this new debt that they're about to take on. So we look at it through the lens of how long is the loan going to be outstanding? Therefore, that's the amount of time we need to make sure that they have the ability to repay all of their debts.
So let's talk about the preliminary title report. When do we obtain that preliminary title report?
The preliminary title report is started right when we begin negotiations with the borrower, right when they agree to terms and we're about to release it to our investors. Then we pull a preliminary title report. Just like when you buy a house, the preliminary title report comes after you've already gone under contract to buy that house. Here's no different. Once you have agreed to go on the loan, that's about the time that we'll get it. And it's usually at the very end of the process for a few reasons. One, although it's a preliminary title report, it does indicate all of the recordings against the property. We need to make sure that we are in first lien position. Secondarily to that, it gets updated the day of recording. The reason behind that is we want to make sure there are no other liens that have gone on the property since we originally looked at that report or agreed to terms with the borrower. So the preliminary title report isn't usually available to be disseminated to the investors until right before closing.
And the final item that Misty mentioned was the appraisal or evaluation of the property. Mm-hmm. Is this something that is always obtained for a loan?
It is not something that is always obtained, but is something that is usually obtained. Here in the state of Nevada, we are required to give one of those options to the investors, whether it's a BPO, an appraisal, purchase price, assessed value, things of that nature. In other states, the requirements may be slightly different, but we are moving towards more of those BPOs than less of them. So you will see going forward that most of our loans will have BPOs or some sort of valuations associated with them in the future.
So Misty, when should an investor expect to receive these documents?
So on an original funding, the documents, the pre-funding documentation packet is sent one business day prior to the loan closing. Again, that goes back to what Pat just talked about with the preliminary title report. We want to make sure that it is as close to funding as possible. And then investors who go on an assignment loan will actually receive that packet the same day that they ask to go on the loan. Again, once a loan funds, we know that the title report is not going to change. So investors who are assigning onto a loan do get it a little bit quicker than one on an original funding.
Thank you very much. I appreciate both of you spending some time with our investors to help educate them on what the pre-funding documentation is that they should expect to receive at Ignite Funding. We know sometimes it can be confusing, but hopefully this video will help all of you in the future.